Welcome to HSBC Global Viewpoint, the podcast series that brings together business leaders and industry experts to explore the latest global insights, trends, and opportunities. Make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with new episodes. Thanks for listening, and now on to today's show.
This is a podcast from HSBC Global Research, available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. However you're listening, analyst certifications, disclosures, and disclaimers must be viewed on the link attached to your media player.
Hello and welcome to Under the Banyan Tree, where we put Asian markets and economics in context. I'm your host, Harold van der Linde, Head of Asian Equity Strategy at HSBC. Well, the votes are in and South Korea has a new president. Lee Jae-myung will be the country's next leader after months of political turmoil. What does that mean for the macro and the micro landscape? Joining me to help answer those questions are Korea economist Jin Choi and Asia equity strategist Prerna Garg. Let's get the conversation started under the banyan tree. Let's start with a bit of background on the new Korean leader. Lee Jae-myung is an altogether different figure in Korean politics from many of the leaders that we've seen in the past. He doesn't come from a rich and powerful family. He worked his way up from humble beginnings to become a civil rights lawyer before going into politics. Perhaps most notably, his views are largely seen as progressive compared to past Korean leaders. So we're going to look at the future of Korea. Very important economy in North Asia. With that, I think the way to approach is maybe to look at it from the top down with our economist, Jin Choi, but also from the bottom up, looking at how corporates are behaving with my fellow strategist, Prerna Garg. So, Prerna, Jin, thanks for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having us here, Harold.
Thank you, Harold.
Good. So, Jin, let's kick off with you. We're looking at the top down. So, how is Korea going to look like over the next couple of years?
Sure. Let me start off with the near-term implications of the presidential election.
Yes.
So now the big story in Korea is that growth is really bad this year. A lot of people expect the growth will be below 1%, which is unusual in Korea's standard. Now, what's been weighing on Korea's growth this year is that the domestic demand has been very slow to recover.
People not spending too much money.
Exactly. I'm talking about household consumption. I'm talking about corporates investing, right? And this is despite the Bank of Korea cutting policy rates in order to help
stimulate that, right?
Yes, correct. Now, the main corporate sentiment has been very weak amidst the very well-known political turmoil, domestic political turmoil.
Yeah, because Korea is an exporting country, right? So all the talk about tariffs, that really hit Korea pretty hard, right? The automakers, yeah.
Correct. So export is on a weak standing at the moment, which is rather expected given all the tariff noise coming from the U.S. side, right? But then what's been concerning domestically is that the domestic demand, as I was mentioning, has been very slow to recover. Now, this is in a way, a formal ending of the political uncertainty that was weighing on households and corporates domestically.
Yeah, because we've had quite a roller coaster in politics in Korea,
Indeed,
right? There's been this whole impeachment process and the martial law issues.
Yes, we all love K-dramas and K-movies, but,
yeah,
my friend's been telling me that Korea politics has been much
better than that even.
Exactly,
yeah, right.
Exactly. Yes, so that's a big takeaway. Number one is that potential removal of political uncertainty could potentially lead to recovery in the sentiment and help provide some boost to domestic demand recovery in the second half. The second quick implication is to see a swift shift in fiscal policy towards it becoming more expansionary.
Yeah, more spending.
Exactly. So the President Lee Jae-myung has already promised he'll pursue a second extra budget that's going to be 35 trillion Korean won or more.
To ignite that economy a bit further because the exports are weak and
Correct.
People are worried about spending, right?
And he's been saying that money will be going to boosting consumption, especially for the low-income households, and also it's going to help small merchants.
Now, But if we look at Korea kind of in the longer run, you said in the beginning this is kind of in the near term. So the political uncertainty has gone away. There's going to be more fiscal spending. That's all nice and well. But in the longer run, Korea looks a little bit like Japan in a sense. You've got an aging population. Something needs to be done about the demographics. On one hand, Korea competes with Japanese companies quite often that are technologically quite competitive. But on the other hand, on the cost side, it has the Chinese coming up as well, right? So how are they going to address that?
Right. So the sense of concern on Korea corporates' competitive edge globally has been rising. So if you look at what Lee Jae-myung has proposed for the election, he's been saying that he'll increase support for the new technologies such as AI. He's talking about formulating Korean 100 trillion sized fund that's going
to set up and promote AI investments. Because Korea has been a little bit slow in that front. They're normally on the forefront of technology, but it's been really kind of China and the US that are leading this at the moment, right?
Right. So Korea's major semiconductor companies have been big on the related memory chips. But then in terms of actual AI technology, he's been saying that we want to promote that ourselves as well.
Yeah.
So,
and are they going to do something about the demographics as well? Because that's a major
Korea has
issue.
the lowest birth rate in the world.
It's got exactly lowest birth rate in the world. It's aging. So what can they do on that front?
Right. So he has Lee Jae-myung has some interesting ideas as well on the front as well. He's been talking about expanding childcare support. He's been also talking about tackling the cost involved with nurturing your kids, such as education. Right. Yeah. If you think about the root of Korea's aging demographics issue, one of the things that's sometimes overlooked is the property market issues. Right.
Yeah,
so
it's expensive.
For me, that's a very interesting policy area which might have been a little bit missing in the campaign trail. The previous administration was well known for an aggressive regulatory approach to addressing Korea's housing market issues. So it'll be interesting to see how the policy develops under Lee Jae-myung. Just if I may add on just one more point, if you look at the National Assembly, the current DPK, Lee Jae-myung's party, has more than 170 seats out of 300.
So he's got a majority.
He's got the majority.
So he
already.
can basically get his policies through.
Correct. For most of the legislations, it just requires only half of the total, which is 150, which the DPK already has by itself. And then if you add other smaller liberal parties, which could be generally aligned with the DPK's policy agenda, they have almost 190 seats out of 300, meaning they can fast track their bills to general voting. So they have a lot of leeway to go through.
And get their policies
exactly.
through. So the picture that you give to me is that there is a political dynamic now that allows them to make some real big changes in Korea with a focus on the birth rate and childcare and education, the housing market, and in the near term also simply stimulating the economy with consumer spending. So it could well be that a new sort of Korea starts to emerge over the next couple of years from the top down. But I think, Prerna, from the bottom up, we're seeing changes as well. You've looked at corporate governance changes.
We have. So as Jin mentioned, with the new administration in power, it takes away a lot of uncertainties, not just for the economy, but even for equity market. Like, investors have a lot of factors to look forward to. And one factor they're going to closely monitor is what it means for the corporate governance, what it means on the corporate governance.
Because just to put in place, that's not been good in Korea.
It's
right?
not.
You have
So
these large groups where families sit on top. And in the past, they haven't really paid dividends and these sort of things.
It's not. So, if I take a step back, Korean markets and as well as Japan within Asia, they're known as corporate laggards of the world. As you mentioned, there are multiple cross-holdings within Korea. So think of a tech company that is invested in pharma company, which in return has invested in mining company.
Yeah.
It
And
really does
owned
not
by
do.
an insurance company or
it's
something like that.
owned by. It really does not do very good for the profitability of the big conglomerate. So because of this reason, Korean equities often trade at a discount to valuation. What I mean by that is an investor would be ready to pay much more for the unit earnings in Taiwan than they would do for Korea. And the government and the regulators in Korea, since many years, are trying to remove this discount. They're trying to improve the corporate governance so that investors feel more excited about investing in the equity
And what
market.
are one or two things that we might expect that they're going to focus on?
Mr. Yoon's government, the ex-president, he had introduced, if you remember, something called the Value Up program in Korea. They wanted to motivate Korean companies to pay more dividends, to do more buybacks, so that foreign investors and domestic investors feel more excited about investing in the companies. Because Korean corporates, they have been sitting on massive pile of cash. Instead of making massive investments, they generally take very conservative approach, and they have a lot of cash on their balance sheet, and it brings down the profitability of the companies. This is because generally a member of the founding family takes decisions for the company, and they take very conservative approach instead of really boosting the value of the minority shareholder. What Mr. Lee's government wants to do is they want to make some amendments, some changes in the commercial law. What they want to do is to make the board more responsible for the benefits of minority shareholders instead of just working for the founding family.
Exactly. So instead of the family who runs the businesses, whatever they want to do, now they are going to be legally held accountable to listen to what minority shareholders want
to do. So if you see, if it works in the right direction, this means that the board of the company would be doing what is right for ultimately the profitability of the company. This might mean they want to lessen the cash levels on the balance sheet by paying more dividends or by doing buybacks, or they want to untangle the so-called noodle-like structures in the corporate system, wherein they're just a lot of these cross-holdings which really don't boost the profitability of the companies. So market would be very closely looking at what type of policies comes out of Mr. Lee's government. And as Jin mentioned, that the current administration has a majority in the assembly. So they have much more power to go ahead with passing these regulations and making some changes in the corporate governance front.
Fantastic. I suggest we take a quick break here and then see what that means for the Korean discount. So here we are. We've looked at Korea from the top down, from the bottom up. There seem to be a lot of changes. There's a bit of political will maybe to do so as well. The interesting question is, Korea's always traded at a discount, as you said, Prerna, right? It's always been cheaper because people felt that they would, as shareholders, never be really taken care of, and that there were longer-term structural issues that might mean that domestic growth was not so fantastic. And if this is going to be addressed, it could well be that this is going to be a big theme for the market. Now, how quickly that will be addressed, the untangling of these noodles, as you mentioned, right? That will take years and years, of course, to materialize.
It can be a really slow process because if you remember, Japan has been trying to do it for a decade. Yes, it's going in the right direction. Yes, companies are divesting the stakes from the unrelated businesses. They're paying more dividends. Ultimately, it boils down to, does it improve the profitability of the company? And that can be a slow process. But at the same time, if investors see if some progress is being made in this direction, it just reignites the interest of investors in investing into a particular market. So more progress on this front can really do this magic because, in last few years, foreign investors have been reducing their positioning on Korea. They've been reducing their exposure. So this can really reignite the lost interest in Korean equity market.
Yeah. And Jin, as a Korean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, as a Korean, I'm in a way a little excited as well.
I can see he's all smiles.
Every big endeavor has to have a start, right? And I think Korea politics have ability to push through a lot of policy changes, which could be very beneficial for Korea, which is currently at the crossroads. So against the long-term prospect of slowing growth, aging demographics, the policy direction is becoming all the more important.
So let's just conclude everything. The political constellation in Korea is kind of unique at the moment that some really big and long-lasting decisions can be made. From a macro point of view, it means that they can deal with some of the more pressing issues such as demographics and fiscal spending, and also maybe income inequality in the country. And from a more micro point of view, it means that they can really address some of the kind of entangled cross-holdings that are such a particular phenomena in Korean business life. A new Korea might well emerge out of this, so it's going to be an interesting sort of market to look at over the course of the next couple of years. And no doubt we're going to ask Prerna and Jin to come back to comment on this in the future. Well, that's all we've got time for on today's episode. Thanks as ever for joining us. Under the Banyan Tree is a HSBC Global Research podcast out every week. So is our sister podcast, The Macro Brief, so do give a listen to that one too. We'll be back again same time next week. Talk to you then.
Thank you for joining us at HSBC Global Viewpoint. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. Make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with new episodes.